Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be a surprise for many of you who have been following my channel for any length of time. I know you're probably shocked that, hey, DM Bloodworth is going to do a review of The Legend of Vox Machina. And to be honest with you, it wasn't something that I was planning on even during this last week or so since it was released. I believe it was released on January 28th, if I'm not mistaken. And I certainly watched all three episodes last weekend and watched the three episodes since yesterday. And what I decided to do was I decided to, watch them the first time and go through it and just kind of measure it as my impressions of it as a non-critter and a non-5e gamer. And what I mean by non-critter is that it's not that I'm opposed to Critical Role. I've possibly watched three episodes, and not even in their entirety, just portions of maybe three, possibly 4 or 5 episodes over all of these years that it's been out. And although I can appreciate the the acting that they're doing at the table and the storytelling and the entertainment value of what they're doing at the table, I can also see what has since been called the Mercer effect, where it does create what they do on Critical Role has created a an expectation that is an unreasonable expectation for your typical dungeon master or game master to be able to reproduce at their tables. So it's it has the positive of having brought a lot of new people into looking at Critical Role and potentially looking at Dungeons and Dragons in general, or at least the role playing hobby in general. But along with that comes that unreasonable expectation, as I pointed out. Now, as a non-5e gamer, what I mean by that is that I am not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, particularly after the first three core books and the direction that Wizards of the Coast has brought that game into. So I am an old school dungeon master. I play older editions of not just Dungeons and Dragons, but older editions of many role-playing games that were out there back in the day. And doesn't mean that I don't play at all any modern games, because there's a lot of OSR games that are modern games that took older and put a twist to it. And I also play some independent games that are not old school at all. And they're simply independent releases that have their own style and game mechanics and such, that they're not considered a derivative of Dungeons and Dragons. So all of that is kind of going on in my in my mind as I'm watching this streaming series for the first time. And just to kind of try to put it into a context, so I have the original Dungeons and Dragons, the animated series. I watched it as a as a young teenager, and enjoyed it back then. And I see a comparison between these two, even though they're dramatically different. Obviously, this was released back in like 83 through 86 or somewhere around then. Maybe later. I haven't actually double checked to see. And you know this Vox Machina obviously has much more updated smoothness to its graphics and such. Apologize for the garage that you're hearing. But it's the one thing that I noticed, and it's one of the criticisms that I've seen of The Legend of Vox Machina, and it was a criticism that we kind of had of this back in the day as well, is that both of them are not an exact replica of what you'll see in the rule books of the game and or the game system that it's supposedly using. And there's several reasons for that, but the primary reason for that is that so many dungeon masters or game masters will take a game system and they will run roughly 90% of that game system, and and then will the rest of that portion, they will take other pieces from other games or just homebrew it and create their own thing. So when we're looking at these and looking for the the exact copy of what is in the game rules, we're not going to see it. All right, it's not going to be there. And if you focus on, oh, wait a second, that's not a character class in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, or that's something that's a spell that doesn't exist in the game, or that's a magic item, or that's a race, or whatever. That's not a playable character class. Or this looks like Pathfinder 1st edition rather than a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of flexibility in what a dungeon master can do. All right, and whatever he or she decides to do at their gaming table is what it's going to be. That's how it's going to run in their system, and this is no different than that. So just as this was no different. Now, I don't believe that this was a an ongoing campaign that was run first and then reproduced as a cartoon, as The Legend of Vox Machina was. So you'll probably see more of a gameplay connection to The Legend of Vox Machina than you will here. However, you have to remember that it's highly homebrewed, and so there's going to be disconnects between the rule books and what you're seeing in this video as well. So let me go on and share a little bit of background as far as the streaming show. So this is the IMDb or DB .com, and this is basically their their section on it, and you can see that it's rated very highly. It's rated 8.9 out of 10 so far after 5.3 thousand viewings, I guess, or just ratings. So that's one thing. Its popularity is up by 36%. Don't know exactly what that means. I'm not very familiar with this site, but what we can do here is I'm not going to bother running the trailer. I wanted to talk a little bit about the some of the information I do glean from this. All right, so Season 1, Episode 7 is going to come out next Friday, Friday the 11th. And I'm assuming that will be Episodes 7, 8, and 9. So far, it seems like they're being released in 3-episode blocks. Now, something I also started to realize here is that Season 1 apparently is going to be 13 episodes. And I can tell that because I can see some of the characters and how many episodes they appear in. So this is potentially a spoiler. It may mean nothing at all because characters may come or go during the during a season and then come back later on. All right, so here we have uh, Laura Bailey plays Vexalia Vassar. I don't know if that's her whole last name, the character's whole last name here. I believe it is. And this character is a ranger, I believe, or a very ranger-esque character. Then we have Ashley Johnson, who plays Pike Trickfoot, and Pike Trickfoot is a cleric. Uh, I believe she might be a gnome, although I'm not exactly sure. I don't think a halfling because she's not barefoot, but she might also be a gnome. Vex is a half elf, and they stated as much. Marisha Ray plays Calith, who is a druid, either a half elf druid or an elven druid. I have a feeling she might be a half elf, and the druid is a. Oh, I'll get into the characters a little bit later. We have Travis Willingham. He's playing Grog Strongjaw, was a barbarian, I believe a half giant barbarian, or just a very large human. But I believe probably a half giant. Although I haven't been able to figure out what game system they're using for that, because it wasn't in Pathfinder 1, so not really sure. And yeah, as you can see, 13 episodes, and so on. I'm going to skip over to the top here with Taliesin Jaffe. He plays Percival Di Rollo, who is kind of like a pistolier, kind of a character. So he uses pistols and a rifle that I guess we'll see a little bit later on in the season. So certainly not through the first 6 episodes, but kind of revealed that rifle at one point. So sorry about the slight spoiler in there. And so he is a gunslinger, of some sort. And again, not directly connected to 5e. And so, although I couldn't find a gunslinger in Pathfinder First Edition either, so I don't know exactly where that came from. It might have just come from a complete homebrew as well. Liam O'Brien plays Vax, who is the brother, also a half elf of Laura Bailey's character, and Vax is a rogue, kind of a character or a thief or whatever. And then we have Sam Riegel. Sam Riegel plays Scanlan Shorthalt. That's a gnome bard. And as you can see, one of the things that we see a lot of in modern gaming is that almost it's a party of 7, which is a fairly large party, although not tremendously large. Only one human in the entire bunch. No dwarves, at least not in the primary, party, adventure party, and no halflings, that I can see either. So so it's a very half elf, gnome centric group, which is kind of an interesting thing. You normally don't see that. Moving on, obviously the big name here is Matthew Mercer, and he plays Silas Briarwood. He's in 12 episodes, so and that's not because he leaves or whatever. It's just that his character was not seen in the first episode, but obviously carries through the rest of the season, for the most part. So at least that's my conjecture on it. So again, we really can't draw too much from the number of episodes, other than I think it's pretty clear that season 1 is 13 episodes. We go on to some of the other characters, throughout. So Stephanie Beatriz plays Lady Kima through 12 episodes. Um, again, a fairly common appearance throughout the throughout that first season. The Sovereign Uriel Taldori is in 3 episodes. Lady Allura Visoran is in 3 episodes. Not quite sure if I've seen her character just yet. Delilah Briarwood is in 2 episodes. Sir Fince, played by Tony Hale, is in 2 episodes. Logic plays the Palace Guard in 2 episodes. Matthew Middleman plays Desmond, 2 episodes. David Tennant from Doctor Who fame plays in 2 episodes. He's General Krieg. Stacey Raymond plays Byrne, 2 episodes. And Felicia Day plays Bandit number 2 in just 1 episode. So you have some guest appearances and such. So the characterization of each of these characters, I will go back to the main characters here. So Vex is a ranger, and I believe that she's a ranger because she does have an animal companion in the form of a large bear, which is called Trinket. I think it's Trinket, and so she's very bow heavy, utilizing a bow as her primary weapon, and between her and her brother, Vax, they seem to be the most charismatic of the leaders amongst the group. In other words, it's if they decide to do something, it's going to get done. And if they decide against something, it probably won't be done. And the rest of the party tends to just follow their lead. So, and I haven't seen through the first 6 episodes yet where they have any difference of opinion that causes a split. So, so they seem to be the leaders of the group jointly. So, Pike Trickfoot is the cleric, and she seems to be either unsure of herself as a cleric or as an adventurer, and so she seems to struggle with a certain amount of almost like a loss of faith kind of thing, or she believes that her deity is not exactly happy with her. Apologize for the garage again. And so you'll see that throughout, where she just is somewhat unsure of herself. Kalith, who is the druid, is another character very unsure of herself and just unsure of adventuring, as a whole. She's acting more like her character is out of her depth, and she even kind of extends that in the first episode, for the whole party might be out of their depth. Grog Strongjaw is your very stereotypical large-bodied barbarian, played fairly dim-witted, which is unfortunate because I understand it's a trope, and it's one that's quite frankly done so to death that it would be a pleasant change to have a barbarian with at least average intelligence. Getting to Percival de Rollo, which is played by Taliesin Jaffe. So this is the kind of the unknown character class that he's playing, whether it be a swashbuckler or a pistolier or whatever. And his character is kind of like the straight man kind of character, where like in a comedy trope you have you have the Joker and the straight man, and the straight man is a very serious one, and he's very serious, and he has a dark um, a dark side to him, because he has a very dark past, and so um, he, is, for me at least, he's actually one of the most interesting of characters, because he's got that kind of dark element to him, and he's a bit unpredictable, um, right from the first couple of episodes. So right now, I'm leaning towards him being my favorite character so far. Um, Vax is a rogue, very mercenary, and that's really the first episode. And I'll get to talking about the first episode and how the whole party is portrayed when we get to that point. Um, but he's very mercenary. But he, when he sets his mind on something, that's the way the party is going to move in. So he has that leadership ability, and that charisma to drag the rest of the party along with him. And it is in the first episode where he really asserts that, because once he says, "Oh, we're doing this thing," the rest of the party just chimes right in along with him. Um, Sam Riegel plays Scanlan, and Scanlan is the comic relief of the party, and that's another trope that I wish they would do away with. And when I say they, I mean like Hollywood would do away with, is that um, fantasy movies, or cartoons or whatever, um, they can be serious, and they don't need the jester character thrown in there. And as an old school person too, even though there are bards in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, I'm not a huge fan of a bard as a character class. I don't think that a bard should really be a character class. I think of a bard as being an expert henchman of some kind, and nothing more than just an entertainer that can possibly boost the morale of the party for whatever reason. It's a wholly unnecessary character class, in my opinion. Um, and as I said, Matthew Mercer is he plays the main bad guy, and so that's or he's voice acting the main bad guy, and so that's a very interesting thing to see how that dynamic will continue on. But he's certainly not the main character in this. He's not part of the party, which is actually an important thing, because you see you see him, even though he's a dungeon master in the game, running the games, he's just taking on the role of the primary adversary that they're going to be facing during season one. It remains to be seen, how long his character goes on, and if he picks up something different, a different character in season two. So let me switch back off of this now, and we'll come back to here. So overall, my overall impression of the first episode was that it was very much like a session zero. It kind of lays the groundwork for the party, where they're coming from. They do have somewhat of a back history to them. Their back history is certainly flawed, and each character has a flaw that that's a noticeable flaw. You kind of pick up on it right away, or they even state it. They express what their flaws are, and so there's every single character is initially a very non-heroic character. They start with the tropes, pretty much right away. So they're starting out in a tavern. They have a tavern brawl. They are they're down on their luck. They're down to their last couple of coins, in their pocket. I believe it was two silver pieces left. to their pocket, and they're just looking for work, but they don't have a great reputation because they're all somewhat, you know, as I said, very flawed, and as a group, they're seen as being somewhat buffoonish and unreliable. So they're brought into the story of and are hired as a mercenary group to take care of this great and powerful evil creature. Unbeknownst to them, they're not quite sure what it is, and it doesn't matter. They're taking this money. They're going to go forward, and they're going to meet this challenge. Now, I will give this one spoiler because after a week and a half or so, you probably saw it already. But their first major challenge is to fight a blue dragon. And so, again, as a gamer, you have to realize that this isn't a first level party going up against a dragon, a very powerful dragon. It's not a young or young adult or anything like that. This is probably a very old, if not an ancient dragon, probably very old, and so very powerful. And they, in this first episode, encounter the dragon, and they're defeated. They're willing to say at that point, "Listen, this is way more than what we were expecting, and we have no real connection to these people, and we can just walk away." And initially, only the cleric was the only one that was kind of like, "No, we have to help these people." And then they come across a village that they had passed through initially that has now been destroyed, and this is when Vax, the rogue, basically comes across someone that he had cared about, and he sees that character dies, and now he is adamant, we're going to finish this thing through. We're going to see it through, and the rest of the party joins in. So you see that very, very tried and true, a group of misfits looked down upon by others, not very confident in their own abilities. They take on a job. They start questioning whether they can do it or not. They have a greater motivation, arises when they're first knocked back a little bit. Now their motivation is steeled, to go forward now, and they're going to move forward, you know, and become heroic. All right, because they don't expect that they can win, but they're still going to do it because now they're very motivated to do it. So it's good storytelling. It's it runs through those various stages of storytelling that you kind of expect in a fantasy fiction, and it delivers. It delivers as far as the graphics and the action and the voice acting and that general very basic storytelling that they do works well. Some of the things that might turn people off is there is language, and there's sexual innuendos, and there's language usage in it, and not so much in that first episode, but the thing that I would say is the primary criticism that I have as far as using the language. And it's certainly not. Episode 1 was rated for 18 plus, and then the later on episodes come down to 16 plus, and they didn't really seem to be very consistent with that, because I found where some other episodes might have been an 18 plus as well. But what I looked at when I heard the language being used was that it was the vulgar language being used was that it was gratuitous, and doesn't mean that that's very frequent, but there were times when it was used when it was unnecessary. If they're going to drop the F bomb, then there should be a reason behind it. The it should make the statement be that much more poignant, much more forceful than just to throw it out there very nonchalantly. And so that's where I have the criticism for the way that they use the language, and then just just the character of Scanlan being as comic relief. The rest of what's going on in the episode is serious enough to be engaging, and since you are making it for an adult audience, you're not making this for children. You're making this for an adult audience. Adults don't need comic relief. They're okay with having a fantasy, fiction television show, even if it's a cartoon, have, and stick to a serious tone to it. So overall, I would say if I were going to give this a 0 to 10 rating system, I would say it was a 7, and I think I'm fairly confident with that 7. I think that it was better than I was expecting. It was pretty good. I wanted to continue watching, the next 2 episodes last Friday, and I certainly did that. I will break this down episode by episode, so I will get through all of these, and maybe I'll start bundling them up as we go. But episode 1 needed to stand by itself. I may take episodes 2 and 3 and combine them into one video. Episode 4, I want to have it as standalone, and I have a reason for doing that. And then 5 and 6 I may also bundle as well. So some of these kind of reviews of the episodes will be single episode or multiple episodes kind of bundled up together for a reason. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this video. I recommend, if you do have Amazon Prime, which I already had for free shipping basically, if you do have Amazon Prime, then certainly give it a look. It's certainly worth your half hour of time to give it a try, and I think that you'll most likely go forward and watch it more and more. Remember, you're not looking at a direct replica of what you're going to be able to do at your gaming table. It is not a direct transference of any kind of gameplay or strict game mechanics that you're going to find in any edition of any fantasy role-playing game out there. So it's not quite 5e. It's not Pathfinder First Edition. It is Matthew Mercer's dungeon mastering of his campaign that you're actually witnessing on the screen, and I think that's the best way to look at it, so that you're not sitting there and you don't have to get all bent out of shape or just questioning, well, how does this character cast that spell if she was a druid, or why can't she cast that spell as a cleric if if that's what a cleric has at first level or second level or whatever. You can't look at this and break it down into precise rules as written of any game system out there. Otherwise, you're going to take away from the potential of it being as entertaining as it can be for you. And so I think that's why it's best not to look at it as a fan of Critical Role, not to look at it as a fan of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but to look at it as just a fan of fantasy fiction in a cartoon written for adults, and and just look at it for that context, and I think that you'll actually enjoy it as well. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you like this video. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. I will continue this series with with every episode or so, combined up as I stated earlier. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You'll have a great afternoon, rest of your weekend. Stay safe and keep on gaming out there. Thank you.